I declare war. Today I was on YouTube and I saw a couple of videos that Oshay Duke Jackson posted. Those videos are entitled A Message to the Shine, Part 1 and 2, and then he also had another video entitled Why Do We Have Unhappy Black Male YouTubers? So after I saw his videos, I said, let me check out what David Carroll's talking about. And then I saw David Carroll's video, so I want to talk about this dispute that's going on between these two YouTubers. So this whole event boils down to a community event that Oshay Duke Jackson was trying to promote. He wanted YouTubers and people in the so-called Black manosphere to support the event, to advertise it so that they could get a lot of people to turn out and to participate in the event or to financially support the event. So after putting this call out, Oshay Duke Jackson was disappointed with the level of support that he received from Black men. And he did a video expressing that frustration and that anger. And he was basically lashing out at the Black manosphere for not adequately supporting his event. While lashing out at the Black men, Oshay Duke Jackson praised a Black woman, Crystalline Carroll, for supporting the event. He said that she was more pro-Black than a lot of the Black male YouTubers. And a lot of people probably didn't take that well because Crystalline Carroll is not a popular personality here on YouTube among Black men. And one of the people that did not take this well is David Carroll. David Carroll did a video entitled Different Sides of the Same Coin, Part 2. And really that video was supposed to be directly towards Crystalline Carroll and Cynthia G. It was supposed to be an analysis of that dispute. But instead what it turned into is like half of it was dedicated to this dispute with Oshay Duke Jackson. So David Carroll was taken aback because he said, well, that he did in fact support this event, that he did in fact post a video that included the flyer to that event. But he posted it on his Rabbit Hole series, which is a private series that most people do not get to watch. And that's something that Oshay Duke Jackson pointed out. He pointed out how it wasn't posted on David Carroll's main channel. So it's understandable that somebody wouldn't notice it because a lot of people don't watch his private videos. I know I, for one, hardly ever. I've never seen his private videos. I think a couple of times somebody may have sent me a link to some of them. But other than that, like I don't watch his private videos. So it's understandable why somebody like Oshay would assume that David Carroll didn't support the event. So David Carroll says, well, he did support it. He posted it. And then David Carroll goes on to criticize the event. The event was a community cleanup effort in Houston, Texas, if I'm not mistaken. And David Carroll basically said that people have to take pride in themselves first. That you can clean up a neighborhood, but if people don't have pride in that neighborhood or in themselves, they will put trash back out on the ground right after you clean it up. So that was his criticism of that event. But he said even though he didn't quite agree with it, he still advertised it and he still promoted it. So he took exception to what Oshay Duke Jackson was talking about. And then he also challenged this notion that somehow Crystalline Carroll is pro-Black. And understandably so, because by no stretch of the imagination can this woman be deemed to be pro-Black, despite her support for that event, that one event. While significant, while that's something that's worthy of respect, it's nowhere near being considered pro-Black. So I understand what he was saying on that point. And then he also criticized O'Shea Duke Jackson by saying, well, it's stupid to expect people to actually fly to Houston to participate in a community event. And O'Shea basically said, well, that's a straw man argument because I didn't tell people to fly to Houston. That wasn't my intent. My intent was basically to advertise the event and get people there locally to participate in the event. So that's what you have here. That's what the dispute is all about. And when you boil it down to its essence, it all comes down to Crystalline Kerrison. I mean, you had this guy praising her, putting her on a pedestal while dogging out black men. So in a way, it boils down to her. And, it boils down to her in another respect. Like, instead of just focusing on this dispute and just resolving this dispute and just countering the arguments that David Carroll made, which, O'Shea does, present his counter arguments, as I pointed out. But instead of just relying on that, this man threatens to release documents on David Carroll. And I think that is like a sign of a loser position. Anytime you feel the need to threaten to release documents on people, anytime you feel the need to personally attack somebody by digging around in trash to find dirt on them, you have already lost the argument. You are already operating from a weak position. And frankly, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's on the level of snitching. That's a weak, punkified move, no matter how you analyze it. But that is typical here on YouTube, where people pull up documents on each other. They pull up dirt on each other to attack each other instead of just dealing with the core essence of what the argument is all about. So I find that to be problematic. I find it to be disappointing, especially from a guy who takes pride in trying to talk about how black men should not behave in dysfunctional behavior. But yet when this man is being scrutinized, when he's being criticized, he resorts to the same type of activity of the so-called dysfunctional Negro that he likes to criticize. So I just think that that's a weak move, and it says a lot about his position. It says that he's in a weak position. And it's a shame that he would throw his own supporters under the bus and heap all kinds of praise on a woman like Crystalline Kerrison. I mean, I just think that that's a shame. And I just think that it's a prime example of what this man constantly criticizes. This is a man who criticizes black men for quote unquote simping, but yet the man did a video where he was essentially simping for Crystalline Kerrison. And then he also, in this recent series of videos, he's further simping, quote unquote, by talking about some supposed email exchanges between Crystalline Kerrison and David Carroll, where apparently, according to O'Shea, David Carroll is making all kinds of passes at Crystalline Kerrison. I'll just leave it at that. And, for those of you who want to know, just look at the videos. I'll include links to them in the description box. But that's basically what he says. I just find it odd that this man would be, quote unquote, simping after criticizing black men for doing so. And if those allegations against David Carroll are true, they will undermine this image that he presents on YouTube. This image of a black man that doesn't fall for, those types of tricks and, doesn't, quote unquote, simp. But yet at the same time, while he's publicly criticizing this woman, he's secretly trying to get with this woman. If these allegations are true, I just think that they will, that will undermine his message. And also, I want to deal with this issue of the community cleanup. I think that his point about people having respect and pride in themselves is paramount, like how that's important, because without that you won't have a community cleanup, because right after the trash is there, after it's cleaned up, people will put out more trash because they don't have respect in themselves or their community. And I think that that's valid, but I think that that effort to clean up a community is a positive first step. And I think if people see examples like that, then they will be prompted to take more pride in their community. And it is something positive. That is a positive endeavor that should be supported. We should clean up our communities. I live in Baltimore, Maryland, and I see that there are two communities that are adjacent to each other, both in Baltimore. Both of these communities are in Baltimore. One is a predominantly white and more affluent community. It has a lot of white people in that community. And then you have another community that's poor and black. These communities are within blocks of each other. These communities have the same number of trash cans, and apparently they have the same number of pedestrian traffic. But you will see that in the more white community, the more affluent community, there is no trash everywhere. The trash is where it belongs, in trash cans. Whereas in the predominantly poor black community, just blocks away on the same street, there's trash everywhere. So that's a valid point about the attitude that people have towards their community. There's no reason why trash should be everywhere in your community. And that's a valid point, but I think that you do have to start somewhere by cleaning up, by showing an example, of what pride looks like, of what self-respect looks like. So I think that that's an important step. But the thing that Oshay Duke Jackson doesn't understand is that David Carroll wasn't interested in actually doing something to improve the black community. He never has been. This is a man who takes pride, who takes joy out of bashing his community. He has no interest in resolving any issues in the community. Because if he did, you would see him talking about solutions. You would see him praising people that are actually doing things in the community. But you do not see that. This man criticizes black people regardless of the circumstances. If you're an urban and poor black person, he has all kinds of criticism about your dysfunction. If you're an affluent black person that has a college education, belongs to a fraternity and all this and that, he has criticism for you. If you're a church-going person, he has criticism for that person. If you're a Republican, he has criticism for you. If you're a Democrat, he has criticism from you. If you're pro-black or you're conservative, this man has criticism for you. Rarely will you hear this man say anything positive about black people, because this man hates black people. He hates himself and he hates his community. And I think a lot of people get this misperception that somehow this man is actually interested in solving problems in our community. That this man actually has some kind of concern about the community. This man hates his community. He hates black people. He hates black people so much that he disassociates himself from black people. He talks about black people as if he is not black. That's what he does. So that's the thing that people don't understand. And that's what Oshay didn't understand. Because if that man was really interested in promoting your event, he would have had it on both of his main YouTube channels so that more people could see it. And if he was really so much about not participating in disputes with black men like he professes that he is, then he would have just reached out to you and talked about it. Like you said in your videos, he would have reached out to you and talked about it and resolved that particular issue. This man constantly talks about black men bickering and arguing on YouTube. But yet that's all he does. he bickers and argues with people. He just does it on a subliminal level where he bickers with you without mentioning your name. It's still bickering. I mean, why even mention that if you're so above bickering and arguing? Why not just do your video and just address whatever issue you're going to address in your video if you're so above bickering and arguing with men? But the fact of the matter is you're not above it. And this dispute is just another reminder of how you're not above it. But I also noticed in David Carroll's video, once he finally gets to the subject matter, I mean, like, you go through half of his video and it's all talking about this Oshay Duke Jackson issue. Once he finally gets to his issue, his analysis of this situation between Crystal and Kerosene and Cynthia G. Once he finally gets to that, essentially what you have is him defending Crystal and Kerosene. I mean, he wouldn't characterize it as that, but that's essentially what it is, because he's essentially supporting the arguments that Crystal and Kerosene made against Cynthia G when she talked about her hair and this and that. And I've stated my position on that issue, but I'm not going to even go further into it, because I've done all these videos about it. But I just want to point out, just the hypocrisy. David Carroll is a man that's full of hypocrisy. This man had the nerve to talk about how these black women going their own way use the same rhetoric as white supremacists. When this man does the same thing, when this man refers to black people as apes, as savages, as shines, and other ridiculous racial slurs, when this man constantly talks about the criminality of the black community, when this man constantly bashes black women, black men, constantly refers to black men as being stupid because they don't agree with his positions on the issues, this man has embraced the same kind of racist rhetoric of these white supremacists. And that's why it's no surprise that his videos will be posted on the Stormfront, a white supremacist website. So this man is the last person to be criticizing black women going their own way when he's part of the reason why these black women have supported a movement like that. He's a prime example of the kind of poisonous misogyny that exists here on YouTube. The kind of misogyny that has produced this kind of hatred that we see among some women here on YouTube. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is this issue of jealousy. Oshay Duke Jackson brought this up. He talked about how perhaps because Oshay Duke Jackson is getting the same number of views as David Carroll, because he's getting the same number of subs and all that kind of stuff, he's reaching a high point. Then maybe because of that, David Carroll is jealous and he feels some kind of way, and perhaps that's his motivation. I don't think that that's his motivation, because he doesn't seem like he's somebody that's all about views. He doesn't talk about views that much. He just does his content and, leaves it at that. So I don't think that he's concerned about that. In the big scheme of things, people shouldn't even look at this as a competition, these views and subs and all that kind of stuff. It shouldn't be viewed that way, because there's plenty of views for everybody here on YouTube. There's plenty of subs for everyone to acquire. There's no need for a competition. So that's my thought about that issue. I don't think David Carroll is motivated by jealousy or anything. I don't think that that's what it's about. The man just doesn't have any pride for or respect for black people, period. And nothing black people will do will ever be enough for him. And that's something that you just got to understand. And that's what people don't understand about this guy. If you know his history, you would understand this very well. So those are my thoughts about this dispute. Tell me what y'all think. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. Peace.